Welcome into this Five Clubs conversation. I'm Gary Williams. The man who's going to be joining me today, he's caddied at the highest level, but that's not what he does for a living. He writes about the game. He's written several very important books about the game of golf, and he's got a new one right now, The Ball in the Air, A Golfing Adventure. He's a contributor to the Fire Pit Collective. And when it comes to writing about the game and having thoughts, like important thoughts about the direction of the game and the important figures in the game, there is nobody better. The man who's going to be joining me in just a moment, and that is Michael Bamberger.
I think this is only a grip.
It's only my sole connection to this.
It's only in my hands on every single shot.
It's an extra 2 yards of carry when it matters most.
Yeah, only a grip.
Mine are only golf pride.
Respect the grip.
And with that, we welcome in the author himself, Michael Bamberger. You could write about anything. You have written about virtually everything in the game of golf. You've probably already been asked since the book launched, The Ball in the Air, A Golfing Adventure. Why? Why these three people? And let me just say out front, it's not just three people. This is about four people, the author included. And I'm going to spend a fair amount of time on the author because people can read about the other three. But why? Why did you choose these three people to focus on?
Well, you could say that three ordinary people. Of course, one of my MOs in life is there are no ordinary people. There are no ordinary stories. That if we dig deep into the life of anybody, you had a young person walking behind you, I saw before, I assume he's your producer. I guarantee if we dig deep into that young person, we're going to find a story to tell, because that's true for every single person on this earth. But what I tried to do in this particular book, I've got a wonderful editor, and Gary, I know you're working on a book, and I would point you to him or anybody who's interested in writing about golf. His name is Jofi Ferrari Adler, and at Simon & Schuster, he's a good golfer himself. And Jofi had the idea that with Live coming on and other things in the game and all the money of professional golf, wouldn't it be a great time to celebrate the amateur game? That's basically all he said. And on that basis, I thought, you and I are of an age, and I think probably people still use this expression today, that golf is the game of a lifetime. It's a cliche, like a lot of cliches. It's absolutely born in truth. You and I have seen the life and times of Arnold Palmer, Lee Trevino, Big Jack himself, Furman Bisher for me, and as a sports. It is the game of a lifetime. So how could I actually express that idea that has enriched my life so much in the way of storytelling, which is what I try to do? And then I found these three particular lives. They're in different acts of the three people are in very different acts of their lives. And very briefly, one is a young woman who grew up in poverty in Nepal, and some people would know her story because she was featured on ESPN at one point. Her name is Pratima, and she's now a Cal State LA senior. She was on the golf team there. And a big tip of the hat to the writer Oliver Horovitz from Golf Digest, who was really the first person to see her and write about her. And then a colleague of ours, in a sense, the writer Ryan French. People don't know that name. They do know him under this name, the Monday Q guy. And Ryan is in middle age, is in his mid-40s, and his life was going down a very chaotic path. And Gary, I know you know a lot about that and have a lot of sympathy with that. And you've already written, I think publicly, about how you were drawn to Ryan's story. To say it was a chaotic path is really a gross understatement. With a lot of help and golf being a big part of it, he found his way to a much saner, healthier life. And then the third person, and I know you know this person as well, Gary, and some of your listeners would, is a 88, soon to be 89-year-old man, well, not soon, 88-year-old man named Sam Reeves, who who is a legend in the cotton business as a cotton merchant. When China opened up its doors to the American cotton markets, he was there knocking on the door. But he's befriended many, many people in the game. But we have this idea of the super wealthy and the super successful, of who they might be. Whatever that cliche idea is, this guy is not that at all. He's one of the deepest, most philosophical, most sensitive people I've ever met, and he represents, the third act of a golfing life. I've learned so much from this man. So you take these three lives, you intertwine them, and I think the reader will come away, I hope, with hopefully a deeper appreciation for a game they probably already love, or they wouldn't pick up the book in the first place.
They will. Having read the book, and it's interesting, when I say I know two of the three people, I obviously know of Ryan quite well over the last couple of years, because he built something that was almost, we didn't realize what a necessity it was to know about all these dreamers that make the effort to try to get to certain levels in the professional game. And the Monday Q became something that I at Golf Channel told our researchers, like, do you guys follow this guy? This was, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And they're like, yeah, he's really good. He's not just really good. He's really remarkable at what he's done. And then by that, he carved out this niche with the outfit that you're a contributor for, the Fire Pit Collective. He's just most recently embarked on his own next chapter with some independence of doing what he's doing. And I know that he's going to get the support that he needs, because he does such damn good work. And then Sam Reeves, I would describe him as a friend of the game. He has such deep relationships with people of all ages in the game, people who played at the highest level, people who have invested in the game intellectually, financially for decades and generations. He could play. He has a vitality about him at 88 that I think is not matched by many people his age. I actually ran into you in Monterey, California last year. I didn't realize you were working on this book. When we saw each other, you're going to spend some more time with him. And then the young lady who, like you said, her family lived in the maintenance shed. I think it was Royal Nepal Golf Course. She found her way to the United States to play collegiate golf. And you're thinking, why would I be interested in these three people? I don't know who they are. Just read it, and you'll find yourself pulled in by their own journeys and the ways that golf has intersected in their various lives. And like you said, we all have these acts. You, sir, I think are just beginning Act 3 of your own journey through this game. And let me talk about you, because I know you say it's about that you share about your own journey in this game, going back to Mr. Greenlee's 8th grade gym class. Why do we always remember, Michael, the name of our gym teachers?
And the girls who said no when we asked them to prom.
Correct. That too. They're emblazoned.
It's usually like a hyphenated name, like, Mary Lou something. Maybe I'm dating myself.
But Mr. Greeley, his gym class, that is the first time you put a golf club in your hand. Your dad did not have an affinity for the game. He loved the outdoors, but golf was not something. So why? Why for you early on? Explain.
Well, now this is a mystery unto itself, and we could go deep on this, although no one's really figured it out. But I kind of do believe there is a DNA strain for golf. I think the PGA Tour is trying to sell golf as some wildly popular sport. I think it's a niche sport. I think it always has been. I think it always will be, because it's so hard and it's so unlikely. They did the little tiny ball, the big crazy playing field. What's this beach doing in the middle of the fairway? Why is the green like this? It's raining, but you're still playing. Really, none of it makes sense, but some people are just crazily drawn to the game. And in my life, thank goodness for Mr. Greenlee coming into my life and exposing me to a game that I might not have ever been exposed to. Why I got bit by the golf bug, I don't know. Gary, you got bit by the golf bug. Millions of us have, but many millions more, many, many, many millions more have not and never will be. I think there's a slight OCD strain that goes
no
with
doubt.
golf. And but a lot of other things as well, including patience and resilience, drive, fortitude. It's not for everybody, but it's not for nothing that we can get on a plane and sit next to somebody with whom we might not have anything in common, except for he or she is a golfer, and suddenly it's a 3-hour conversation, and next thing you know, you're at Hobby Airport or wherever. Anyway, yes, you're nice to note, Mr. Greenlee. We always use the honorifics when talking about our middle school gym teachers. Who was your 8th grade gym teacher, Gary?
Mr. Moran.
Okay, well, there you have it.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain things. First of all, I think it was because it was one of the few activities during the academic day that you look forward to. And I wasn't averse to learning, but gym was such frivolity. I mean, it was like, good grief, when are we going to get to gym class? I can go through the various stages of my academic life and remember all the physical education teachers. And first of all, I wasn't inclined to appreciate them then. I sure as hell do now, because of, they were devoting time to kids who, a lot of us were goofing off. Let's be honest. I mean, we just were.
Right.
And they kind of held some level of discipline together during that 45 minutes to an hour. Right. And hopefully you got something out of it. No, there's no doubt. I also was, as you shared some of the little anecdotes of your infancy in the game, the fact that you had a 5-iron stamped with the name Leo Deagle is you. How many others did?
How about the idea that the metal shaft was painted brown in case the whole steel shaft thing turned out to be a fad?
But people are going, Leo Deagle, what a cheap set of clubs. The guy was a great player. Guy won a couple major championships, was on 4 Ryder Cup teams, but you got his clubs. I don't know how many others played the 5-iron of Leo Deagle.
And it had a black leather grip on it, and the grip was about as thin as a dime and hard as an absolute rock. How I actually held on to it, how I never clocked anybody, and followed through it, that thing just slipped out of my hands. But that was my mom. She saw that I had the interest, and I don't mean to say this next sentence lightly, because it's not a light sentence, but the way I say it, it comes to light. My parents fled Nazi Germany as kids. They weren't expecting to have some son who's going to turn into a golfer and later, someone who wrote about golf. It was all sort of an accident. But my parents did have the thing that, I know many of our parents have, which is help the child explore his or her enthusiasms. And so for that, my parents have died in the past few years. But I was just so lucky to have the parents that I had. And we lived in a small town on the South Shore of Long Island, and I had I think it was considered a Salvation Army, but one of these sort of, yes, no, it definitely was the Salvation Army. I can see the people out in front ringing the bell in winter. Different towns have these different kind of goodwill shops. And you go in there, and there was a little sports section where you could get cleats or, whatever, old baseball gloves. And they had some golf clubs. And my mom went in there and it was enough to get me started.
Well, where you played at Bellport Bay, you would play 2 balls. You were smitten. And one of the things that drew you in was the 1974 U.S. Open. For me, it was 6 years later. I went to the 1980 U.S. Open at Baltusrol with my dad. And
I forgot you were a Jersey. I think you were Florida and Connecticut, but you're really a Jersey boy.
I'm a Jersey boy, Ridgewood, New Jersey. And my dad, who was had a lot of moxie when it came to, how to get the right seat and so on and so forth. I wanted to see Nicklaus, and he said, son, you're not going to see anything. There's going to be too many people. So he said, why don't we follow this guy Fuzzy, who just won the Masters in '79. He was paired with Weiskopf. So Weiskopf goes out and shoots 63 on that Thursday, and Jack was a couple groups behind him and shot 63. I saw Watson make a hole-in-one on the 4th. I saw Crenshaw for the first time. He was my guy. Saw Seve in person. It had me. You had me. I'm all in at that point. But what was it about Winged Foot in '74 that drew you in?
Well, the very first thing was I was just starting in gym class, so in Mr. Greenlee's class. But our family, we were big newspaper readers. And so the idea of this, yeah, so Patchogue, where I grew up, to Wingfoot might be about 70 miles as the crow flies. And just the idea that these famous athletes were, playing this sport that was in our house was sort of mine and mine alone, because my brother was a baseball guy, I was too, and my parents were doing their own thing. So I think just I loved reading the sports page, and then so the combination of it being in the sports page, of being on TV, me taking up golf, I certainly would have known the names Trevino, Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, all of whom were major figures in that event. Hale Irwin, I know, but I did not know the Hale Irwin. But I was just drawn, as I think as we all are, to the bigness of it. And very soon after that, I started watching golf on TV, as I'm sure you did. And then I realized that it was a circus, that it was literally a traveling circus. And Raymond Floyd used this, and Gary, you were kind enough to talk with me in the past about another book I've written called Men in Green. And Men in Green's about some of these iconic golfers of the 70s. And Raymond Floyd figures in the book. And one of the things Raymond says in the book is, we were gypsies. And that's like nobody today. If you said that to Patrick Cantley, he might get the phrase, but he doesn't live that life. They're not gypsies. But those guys were gypsies. And I remember really being somewhere around, not 74, but very shortly after that, who are these people that just travel? And then who are the caddies alongside with them? So I got, that whole runaway and join the circus thing, that landed in me at a young age, and it landed deeply.
Yeah, I mentioned in the open that you caddied in 3 majors in 1985, and I believe it was one of your editors who was impressed by how you could travel on the cheap, and you figured out a way to see the game in a really particular way. And I think you saw it, Michael. I've always felt like I had an appreciation for the challenge, the singular challenge. Nobody else can swing the club except the player himself. And as much as the caddies have become stars to some degree in today's game, and a lot of the players from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they're like, just, show up, keep up, and that's your job. And now we want these conversations, and these caddies have endorsement deals on their sleeves and on their visors and on their hats. But when you caddied, Michael, did you see this, like, this pursuit is so challenging? And did your appreciation of the game get greatly enhanced by that view of the game?
I've never counted up the numbers. It wouldn't be 100 different professional tournaments, so I was never a real caddy. Like, you think of John Wood or our friend Neil Oxman, the late Bruce Edwards, and many other caddies I've gotten to know over the years. But it was definitely enough where I got a real appreciation for what they do. But there's a lot of it just being so close to it. And just to go back to Ryan for a second, a lot of the guys that caddy for people are like, you would know this name, but many of your listeners wouldn't. Billy Britton, who are always sort of, do you remember that name, Gary?
Oh, he's a Jersey guy, of course.
Yeah, Staten Island and then Jersey. In fact, I caddied for him in '85, as you're speaking. The Met Open, I think it was won by George Saringer that year. I'm not sure about that.
George Saringer, I will tell you this just as an aside. Yeah. When he came to Ridgewood for an event, I thought I was looking at Jay Gatsby. I mean, he was right out of Central Casting, the career amateur, had the job, made the money, but was so refined. No, he was the guy.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, I think maybe he was the defending champion, or maybe Billy played with him because they're both defending champions, but I know we played with him. That is, we played with him. But so a lot of my experience in golf and my appreciation for the difficulty of the game and for staying on the game, the very things that Ryan's talking about. Just as a quick aside, I caddied for a guy in Europe named Peter Teravainen, and he was like, for his career, and then he won a tournament. And then out of the blue, he missed 10 or more straight cuts, and then he won the Czech Open. He won 100,000 pounds. His quote at the time was, "Now I'm up to broke." And then Colin Montgomery, of all people, said, "How'd you do it, Peter? You played in all these events. You missed cuts, many, many more cuts than you missed many more cuts than you make. How did you finally win this tournament?" And then Peter said, "Well, there's been a lot of 36 holes where I needed a par to make the cut. I just pretended I was trying to make a cut." That was his mentality to winning this Czech Open on the 72nd hole. And as Peter tells the story, Monty just walked away scratching his head because he's a thoroughbred. He can't relate. But the fact is, everybody's got some kind of trick to get through the day, to get through the round, to get through the putt that they know they might yip. I think if you're a caddy, you become very attuned to that. But another thing along the way is that I know this is true, even though it doesn't sound true. The fundamental struggles of the game are identical for all of us. And that's because the starting point for hitting a golf ball is the same for all of us. The golf ball is still. We stand over the golf ball. We have these ideas in our head about what we want the ball to do. And then this weird system by which we transmute, if that's a word, I'm not sure. I'll look it up later. And Gary, you're a better wordsmith than I, you probably know. But transmute, I'm going to look it up, the idea from the brain to the body to the hands to the swing, and the ball does something. And there's absolutely no way that essential experience is not exactly the same for all of us, whether you're a middle-aged woman or whether you're John Rahm at the height of his powers. And I think that's ultimately why golf is such a powerful fan experience, and that if you go to a tournament like the Masters last week, where you and I were lucky enough to be there, most of the fans are golfers themselves. Just like this used to be true in baseball, and it's probably less true today. But if you go to fans, it's loaded with people who played Little League baseball at some point. They have some appreciation for what it's like to step in a batter's box and have the ball come at you. So I think golf's very lucky that so many of us who love the game know the game from our own experience. And the caddy, as you caddy, you really get to see that. As you caddy for a pro and play yourself and think about your own game, you really can see that and sense that.
The book is The Ball in the Air, A Golfing Adventure. It's available now. These three people that you write about, what I found really impressive was that this, for anybody out there, and you're going, well, yeah, this sounds interesting. It is. You don't have to know people. Everybody's story in golf is different. And what I thought was so expertly done was this was about their journey in life and how golf has intersected at varying points. And they're at different points in their lives. One is a young lady. One is, I wouldn't call Ryan middle-aged, but, he's approaching midlife. And obviously Sam is not in twilight because of his vitality and his vibrancy. But this isn't about tournament results. This is not about how they won this, that, or the other. It's about how golf has given them direction and has always pointed them back to the game in varying ways. How did you do that? How did you achieve writing about their lives and make it enough about golf?
Well, there's a lot in that question, and I think I can maybe get at the answer this way. There's a couple of things I'd like to say about that. One is, and you know this so deeply in your own life, Gary, and I do too. You played at a high level. I didn't, but that doesn't really matter for what I'm going to say next. At some point, you're not going to play at the level you once played. Tiger Woods has found that out, and suddenly we're hearing Tiger talk about the guys. When Tiger was at the peak of his power, he never talked about the guys.
Never.
But now, and we don't really know what it means when Tiger talks about the guys, because my sense of Tiger is he is private by nature, and he needs to be private by nature because there's so many complicated things going on in his life that he can't let out. But having said that, he still talks about the guys and the relationships all the time. I don't want to make this about Tiger, but we all who follow golf, we hear him talking about Rory a lot lately, and we of course it used to be Ricky Fowler, maybe to some degree still is, Justin Thomas for sure, but that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm really trying to make is that as you get along deeper into this game, it's about the relationships. It is always about the relationships. It's about the people you meet along the way. there's a guy in the book named Tommy Blue. He's from Macrahon, Scotland. It's a very remote town. He's my age exactly. I was with the guy for for one 3-hour round. The guy makes it sound derisive in some way. I don't want it to. I was with him for one 3-hour round, and that round will stay with me for the rest of my life. Now, Gary, let's just look at, and if this gets too personal, I want you to tell me, and I know there's boundaries here, and I know there's some things I can't say. But if you look, Gary, I know you've been open about some of the struggles in your project. But if you look at the relationships that started in golf and have extended to your life of recovery, well, I'm going to guess at some names here. Billy Horschel, who's been open about, struggles. Billy Harmon, is he a person in your life?
He is a person in my life. Absolutely.
We've talked about Fred Anton as a person in my life. But Gary, if you think about your path to recovery, it's a daily ongoing path, and how deepened that path has been by the relationships you've made through golf. I mean, what has that been like for you, Gary?
It's, Michael, I wrote about it a couple months ago, just as we were literally getting ready to, 5 Clubs has been in existence less than 2 years, launched the website a couple months ago. And the first thing I wrote about, and the title of it was, it's not about the score, it's about the time. And my reclaiming of relationships, not for one moment do I want anyone to think that golf keeps me sober, but there are things that golf provides me that helps in my daily recovery. And those relationships, that time spent with people who have always remained close to me, but more recently, 3 fraternity brothers of mine who I've made the effort to reconnect with. And we've gone on trips to Colorado and Nebraska and South Carolina and Georgia. That time is vital to me. It's vital to me, engagement, and not seeking the opposite, which is what I did for years, isolation. Golf and that connection to the game and through these relationships, and it's not me talking about my recovery, it's me talking to these people about their lives and joking and making fun of each other for sculling a shot across a green. It is an essential element to the things that I need to do every day. And I don't want it to be a burden. I want it to be a privilege. And golf is one of those outlets. It is a critical component to the life that I need to live every day, Michael.
Well, that is beautifully said. Our friend Jaime Diaz, and you were kind enough to have Jaime and me on together maybe about a year or so ago. But one of the things that Jaime says, to be a golf partner, or really just to be a golfer, but let's just say to be a golf partner, you really have to be empathetic. You need to be an empathetic person because, you just said, you're joking with your friend who sculled the shot over the green, but it's coming back at you in a good-natured way, you hope, or you would expect, because we've all done it. And I have a lot of complicated feelings about Tiger Woods that I've covered in my whole life and try to, not my whole life, but his whole professional life and even before that. But like when he had the chip yips, when John Daly had the chip yips, I'm not equating the two, different things, different people, but I don't know how you could not feel sorry for him. Maybe sorry, maybe that's not the right word, but I think, there goes I. There, but for the grace of God, go I. That's a starting point to being a good golf partner. You want to help your partner, even if you don't like the guy, your opponent, find his golf ball. First off, it's the ethic of the game that you're going to help. But second of all, you're going to need that help too at some point. So why wouldn't you help the guy find the golf ball? If the guy's about to break a rule, why wouldn't you stop him before he does so? Because you might be in that position someday yourself. So golf has more yin and yang in it than almost anything in life that I can imagine. I know, Gary, this is true for you as it is for me. Like, I'm here listening to you, and I'm listening to the enthusiasm with which you're asking some of these questions. And I know where it comes from, because golf is this undying mystery for you, as it is for so many people. I do not get bored of golf, period. I just don't. I just find it endlessly interesting. And I find people endlessly interesting, and I find the people in golf particularly endlessly interesting. So a roundabout way of saying, it's, some books are harder to write than others. None of them, you're working on a book now, Garrett, and you told me just a little bit about, false starts, starting again, learning from your best mistakes, keeping going. But you just keep trying to figure things out in this game. Like, this is just one last thing about the three characters that you mentioned. There's a beautiful play, often misunderstood, called Our Town by Thornton Wilder. I know many people would know the play, and it studies life in 3 acts. And this book that I've written tries to do the same. Now, I never thought of life this way, but until I got going on this book. But let's say one's lucky enough. My dad lived to be 94, and my mom lived to be 88. Let's say one's lucky enough to live a 90-year life. And let's say you started golf at a young age. You could sort of look at golf in 3 different sections of 0 to 30, 30 to 60, and 60 to 90. So I presented that idea to Sam Reeves, who's 88, going to be 89 in July, and then he said he thinks of life in 3 acts. This was his own thing long before, many decades before I got into his life. He thinks of act 1 is preparation, that 0 to 30 roughly. Let's just call it. Let's not get too math oriented here, but there's a preparation section of your life, there's an implementation section of your life, and there's a validation section of your life. And I mean, that's just a little hint to how profound the man is and how he thinks about life. But if it weren't for, the happenstance of a friend introducing me to Sam in the first place, and Sam trusting me enough to talk openly about his life, as I'm sure Billy Horschel does with you and you do with him, I wouldn't be in a position to be talking about this with you now, Gary, or writing it up in a book either.
The story of Ryan French was very impactful, obviously, to me on a couple of fronts. One is somebody who, covers the game, and seeing the appreciation of somebody. It doesn't matter how they got to the point that they got to, that you go to your first major championship, and for him it was the U.S. Open, and you saw the light in his eyes, and seeing this, my God, this is like, wow, this is extraordinary. But how he got there, the vulnerability, the dark thoughts, the desperation that he had in his life. He found himself in Las Vegas, really on the edge of the edge. Was there any? Yeah. Was there any hesitation on his part to share to the degree that he shared?
That's a great question, Gary. Yes, there had to be, because once something's in print like that, it's in print forever. He has a wonderful wife, and they have a very meaningful relationship, to say the least. I mean, that sounds so trite to say. It came out poorly. Just having observed these 2 human beings together, you can see how they connect. Is really, I guess, what I'm trying to say. And they talked about to what degree Ryan should be open with me, talking about the struggles of his. Pardon me, Gary. The struggles of his private life. And one of the things he said is they have 2 young children, and their 2 young children will have their own struggles in life, as we all do. And they wanted, Stephanie and Ryan, their own kids to know, in the most honest way, from a sort of neutral person, what their dad's own struggles were. And that it's okay. This is Ryan's phrase. Many have used it. It's okay to not be okay. And actually, there's something freeing, and not all people are built like this, but there's something freeing about being open about it. And I think Ryan made the calculation that for him, that worked. That's not going to work for everybody. I don't think it's going to work for Tiger Woods. I really don't. But it seems to have worked for David Ferry, God bless him. I mean, he's been through so much, but everybody's different. Everybody's wired differently. So yes, a short answer to your question is he went through a lot of soul searching before he decided to be so public, and it was a calculated decision, rooted in the fact that he thought it would be good for his 2 young children ultimately.
And again, I had reached out to him. I hope that as this book is digested by a lot of people, that he gets the same, response that I've gotten, whether it be from people who know me well or people who don't know me at all. Thanks. And that's not the intent. That's not the motivation. I hope he gets that because he deserves it. And his work, let me ask you, just being around him, and I was consuming a lot of the stuff that you guys were doing at Brookline last year. And his perspective, it was so damn refreshing because not that you're a cynic, but there was an absence of cynicism. I mean, my God, are you kidding me? Here he is at the U.S. Open. He's talking, and the people that he was going up to, there was nothing. He didn't have layers of scar tissue of cynicism just permeating through him. Which just share with you just the experience of being around him that week.
Yeah, that is really neat that you picked up on that. And his great story for the week was, not Matthew Fitzpatrick
Right.
Winning the thing, and not Phil Mickelson reemerging at a press conference. He thought that press conference was a joke. Were you there for that, Gary?
Yeah.
And it was an act and a joke. I kind of didn't really appreciate what a joke it was at the time that it was happening. But Ryan, who has no trouble keeping it real, he immediately identified it for the joke that it was. But having said all that, his great story of the week, and he wrote a number of them, but the great story of the week was one about I hope I have the name correct, Brady Colkins. Do you happen to know the name, Gary?
Yeah, that sounds right. I've got the book right here. But go ahead and share his story.
Brady Colkins was one of his Monday Q guys. Brady Colkins is a legend of something that I knew nothing about. Gary, you probably
Me
did.
either.
Oh, you didn't?
No, not at all.
I had never even heard of the Dakotas Tour, but there's a thing. We all know the Hooters Tour. That's famous. And there's other mini tours. There used to be something called the JC. Did you play JC Goosey?
No, I did not.
Was that long gone by then?
Long gone. Yeah.
Okay. But there are these legendary tours. But the Dakotas Tour, I never had heard one word about it, but Ryan had. And now Ryan grew up in the Midwest, which would definitely explain part of that. But there was a legend of the Dakotas Tour named Brady Colkins, and who's from a small town in Washington State, and he played his way into the U.S. Open, and Ryan was like, this guy closed down. This guy never met a bar he didn't want to close down. I mean, he was living life, on the edge, to the fullest, whatever phrase you want to use. And Ryan wrote him up, and it was one of the great stories to come out of that U.S. Open. This guy, who was this late 20s legend of the Dakotas Tour, playing his way, a rough and tumble guy into a U.S. Open, and Ryan wrote the life out of this story, and it was great. And the affirmation that he got, from these sitting with, maybe he was sitting. I don't remember where you were sitting at Brookline last year, but he's sitting with Jaime and Bill Pennington from the New York Times and other people. He's getting a lot of affirmation, which you can say, not you, Gary, but one can say whatever they want. We all want affirmation.
Of course we do.
We all want to be told that we've done something well. And he found that he could do something well, something that hadn't even been part of his life at all, just a few years later, but was in this most unlikely character that he was writing about, Brady Colkins. And it was like a wake-up call, not a wake-up call, I shouldn't say that because that wouldn't really be accurate, but it was like a reminder to me of what I try to do in my own writing life. It's like, try to find something that somebody else is not doing. And he does that, really every day of his life.
Well, you obviously did it in this book. Again, the title, The Ball in the Air, A Golfing Adventure. I do want to mention, because you said earlier, and you're absolutely right, it's a niche sport. The idea that we are trying to advance this is some, sport that can rival, these big four sports, and at least not in this country. It's not going to happen. That's okay. Embrace who you are. And to amplify what you were saying about it being niche, so are these relationships. There are not many degrees of separation, because as soon as I saw that, and I didn't know the degree that Sam Reeves was so close to Billy Armfield. If I made a list of the 10 people who changed the trajectory of my life at various points in my life, he's on the list. Billy Armfield was a member at Greensburg Country Club. I was on the professional staff there. I got the job at Seminole because Billy Armfield was a member and made a call to Jerry Pittman. And to read that these two men were, bosom buddies at the University of North Carolina, and Billy's dad, and I knew his family's background. Billy's dad was a member of the Everglades, got Billy and Sam on Seminole when they were in college, and they saw Hogan in person. That tickled the hell out of me, Michael, to read about a man who died a couple of years ago of pancreatic cancer and was gone in a blink. That man was a central figure in my life changing. If I didn't get to Seminole, my life wouldn't be what it is. There's no chance.
Wow, Gary, I did not know any of that. That's really, really neat. Well, you might tell Gary, the listeners, who Billy Armfield is. So,
yeah, Billy Armfield was also a magnet and a significant figure in the textile industry, and wound up becoming really the patriarch and the visionary of the Eagle Point Club in Wilmington, which did a one-off for the Wells Fargo Championship. And the people that when I got out of the golf business, who did I sit down? And he told me, do this, this, and this. And I did those things because he told me to do it. He was a really important figure, and was, textiles in the Carolinas. If you were a textile guy and were an important guy, you were a kingmaker. And that's kind of, that's what he was. And the way you described him, he was the most nattily clad guy I've ever seen in my life. Always so well put together. So yeah, that's who he was. And sadly got sick and was gone in a blink.
And his own dad was gone in a blink too. Would you have known that?
I did not know that. I didn't know that.
So just to bring people in a little bit, this is really getting inside baseball. I'll make this very brief. But so this gentleman that we've been speaking of, Sam Reeves, this 80-year-old friend of ours both, grew up in a small town in Georgia, went to the University of North Carolina undergrad, joined a fraternity, and hit it off with another fraternity brother, Billy Armfield. And they were both sort of, in their own way, fish out of water. Even though Billy Armfield, as Gary was just describing, very nattily dressed, prep school sophisticate, wealthy family. But my sense of Billy Armfield from Sam was that, like Sam, he saw the world a little differently. This was not the cliche. These were not made this great friendship at Carolina in the 50s. So it sounds like one thing, and it is that thing, but it was also something else. Two young men who saw the world differently. I just think that's the truth from what Sam has described to me. And there are just people on this earth that see the world differently. And anyway, they went to Seminole in probably the winter of '55. Hogan's on the practice tee. They're like, oh my God, it's Hogan. They can't get off the driving range into the first tee fast enough because it's just too much. It's Hogan. So anyway, it's a neat moment. It's an incredible friendship, and it's wild for me to hear, Gary, that you knew the man. So anyway,
he was. I go back to these points in life that people do things and they become. We all need advocates in life for various reasons, and Billy Armfield was.
How old would you have been when you met him, Gary?
I was 23.
So he would have been 60s.
Yeah. And again, just always maintained this connection. Always, what can I do for you? What do you need? If it's 10 minutes of advice, if you need a phone number, if you need me to call on your behalf, whatever you need, I'm there for you. It could be a 5-year interlude. It could be 10 years. So yeah, to read that, like I said, it tickled me. I'm short on time, so I wish I had hours to talk about the issues in the game. This is about the book, but I want to get you out of here with these 5 quick questions because I mentioned earlier about the experiences.
I got to have a quick one for you before you.
Yes.
I know Peter Millar used to be a thing in your life.
Still is. Absolutely.
Okay. Is Peter Millar a sponsor of
yes.
this fine show?
Yes.
I'm glad to hear it. I would like to say that I'm wearing a Peter Millar shirt. I have no allegiance to Peter Millar, particularly. Peter Millar as a person doesn't exist. I didn't wear, quote for, I'm not selling anything here. I'm making a public plea. This is an all cotton shirt with 4 buttons and a pocket and a hard collar. It's not that hard, people. Could someone, now I'm cricket, with all due respect, great people, I've met them. There's something they're trying a little too hard for me. Whereas Peter Millar was like, what did Arnold wear? We'll just make that shirt, but they're not making it anymore. So that's my question to you, Gary. Are you in a position where you could do something to bring back this most basic of golf shirts?
I can make a call. You and I had this conversation at Southern Hills last year, and I'm in total. Yes, we did.
Okay. Well, sadly, it's a running theme for me. I waste so much time on eBay just looking for cotton shirts because they're very hard to find.
That shirt.
Sam Reed and I had the same conversation because he's a cotton guy. He doesn't appreciate the polyester golf shirt. Can you imagine what the profit margin is on these polyester golf shirts?
Oh my gosh! No, I believe me, I'm totally with you. When I see that shirt, I think of my dad coming home with a Pickering shirt from wherever it was that he had played a round of golf. All right, let me get you out of here very quickly on these five quick questions.
I'll be brief.
Okay, the caddy yard all time, anywhere, with the best stories that you could mine. If you could mine them all, what caddy yard anywhere in the world do you think would have the best stories?
Well, these British Open caddy yards, and in recent years they've done a thing where they've created a trailer. But when you've got Billy Foster, for those that don't know, he now caddies for Matthew Fitzpatrick. He's caddied for everybody and their mother, back to Devin. But just Billy alone, but all those European caddies, they're so funny and they're so insightful. Dave McNeely comes to mind. There's numerous, but British Open European caddies.
Okay.
I'll be right there with it. Ryder Cup European caddies, I would put right there with it.
No, that's a good one. All right. What is the best shot you've ever struck?
I've ever struck? Well, I made a one. Very, 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 very briefly. I made one hole in one. My caddy was a great young man he was a recovering alcoholic himself. He was super involved in my golf game. He gave me a club that was not enough. I knew he was new in his recovery. I wanted to give him a little boost of confidence, so I hit it for him. I hit it hard, and it went in the hole.
All right. We all have a place we haven't played. What's yours?
Place I haven't played. I've never played golf in Australia at all.
Nor have I.
Let's make a trip.
I would love to. That is, I just wrote about the one place in this country. There are plenty of places I haven't. The one place that I'm very keen to get to, and that's Crystal Downs. I'm sure you've been there. I
have, and I love it, love it, love it. I have a feeling that when we get to Australia, we're going to say, "Oh, it's like Crystal Downs," but we've got to do it. So let's put that on our list.
I would love to. All right, what is the best book that you could write of anyone in the game that's currently under 40? Who's the most interesting subject?
Oh, wow. That's really, 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 really a neat question. I'm going to write a book, or someone's going to write a book about a golfer who's under 40, and who would it be?
Yep.
Ooh, I right now of this moment, I just love this John Rahm. I love the way his mind works. I love the way he answers questions. I love his story. I love that Basque spirit. It seems a little obvious at the moment, but it is what's coming to my mind. I know that's part of what the game here is. So I'll say John Rahm.
Yeah, no, I listen, I appreciate the hell out of his pursuit of context to what he's doing, what others have done. There's a curiosity that he possesses it's actually quite inspiring. All right, I'll end with this. The golf book you revisit more than any other.
I have my answer. People are so judgmental about my answer. I'm scared of my answer. It's Golf in the Kingdom.
Yeah. I had a feeling that's what it was.
People don't get it. A lot of people don't get it. Of course, a lot of people do get it. Michael Murphy, its author, 92, one of the smartest, warmest, kindest, greatest people I know. But to me, a great piece of writing transports you in every way. And that book, every time I pick up that book, it does. And it kind of reminds me of things that I like about writing, and I like about golf, and I like about Scotland, and I like about life, really. So it really is that first half of Golf in the Kingdom. For anybody who hasn't read it, just try the first 80 odd or so pages. I think give it a try. It's like golf itself. It's not for everybody, but for those for whom it's something, it's really something.
Yeah, I think it's a necessity. If you do say that I'm invested in the game, you got to read that book. There's no doubt. I would recommend everybody to read this book, The Ball in the Air, A Golfing Adventure. It again proves that if you play golf, you have a story. We all have a story. And these are three really, really compelling stories. Michael, thank you for the time. Thank you for the friendship.
Gary, you do this so well. This is such a pleasure. Thank you, Gary. Thank you for what you do.
Appreciate Michael Bamberger taking the time. I had honestly like 8 or 9 additional topics that I wanted to get to with him outside of the book, but I do highly recommend it. You don't have to know these people. They don't have to be historic figures as far as accomplishment in the game. It's just another example of how the game can lead you down a journey that can be interesting for people who may never know you. But most importantly, all of his writing at the Fire Pit Collective is stuff you should be consuming. And I, of course, appreciate all of you listening and watching this Five Clubs conversation. Next week, the Solheim Cup captain from Europe, one of the fieriest competitors of all time, Suzanne Pedersen, will join us. See ya.